How would I describe being a mom?
It would be chaos.
Being flexible.
It's wild. It's satisfying.
Thinking of a zipper for some reason, mostly because my daughter is like working on doing a zipper, keeps everything together.
I was trying to lead our Bible study virtually, and I'd put my son to bed, and then I hear him wake up, and he had sleepwalk to the kitchen and was just peeing on the kitchen floor. And I was like, no!
This morning, I literally had 2 kids crying on my knees, and I was on the toilet.
Being a mom is full. You're constantly sacrificing yourself. You're putting someone else ahead of your own needs.
I'm winging it most of the time.
So I had appendicitis when I was little, and so my medical record actually states no conception possibility. And through the healing power of prayer, I gave birth to our miracle son, Quincy. And God is just so good, so faithful.
The moment I found out I was pregnant with my first child, at the 20-week ultrasound, I actually found out that she was diagnosed with a cleft lip and an unknown whether or not it was cleft lip and cleft palate. And I just remember thinking something I was looking so forward to was actually being able to breastfeed. And despite her diagnosis and despite just the journey that we had delivering her, I was able to have that.
The older I get, the more my dependency on God increases. Now I've like moved from wanting my kids to be independent to wanting them to have like so much dependence on God, to be able to hear his voice, to be able to care about the things he cares about.
I think something that becoming a mom has taught me is just being patient with God's timing in things.
God specifically created you and had you in mind for your child. God created you to be their advocate.
I've never doubted his love for me. And I would pray that that's the same with our children and grandchildren today, that they would never doubt our love for them, no matter what.
Proverbs chapter 31 is where we are today. Proverbs 31, a familiar passage of Scripture. I shared this text at my maternal grandmother's funeral, and I've been waiting for an opportunity to share it with you. My grandmother passed away a few years ago, and this passage really spoke to me and really was indicative of who she was in some tangible ways. And so I want to share this message, but I want to get you guys to your lunches and brunches. I know moms and wives have places to be today, so my plan is not to keep you long. The sermon slides are in the Coram Deo. If you have the Reconcile app, you can follow me, because I'm gonna stick really closely to that particular text. I'm going to show you something you've probably never seen in the Bible before, but this happens a lot, believe it or not, in sacred scripture. And so I want to show you that wonderful feature in Proverbs chapter 31. And look at this familiar text of the virtuous wife or woman. And as we transition into this text, I was thinking about the blockbuster movie in 2023, the Barbie movie that came out. It was a epic success, made a huge amount of money, and going into the movie as a guy, I thought I was going to be bored to tears, quite frankly. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't grow up playing with Barbie and Ken dolls, and so my girls have a Barbie playhouse, and they've got the camper and the Corvette, and they got all of the helicopter. They got all the Barbie stuff, and they got all the Barbie dolls. My dad and my grandparents bought them a lot of Barbie stuff, so my kids grew up with it. But as a guy, I was in the G.I. Joe and He-Man and all of that. I wasn't in the Barbies, and so I thought this was going to be a snoozer for me. I am a girl dad, so I went kicking and screaming to see Barbie. And actually, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. The movie radically changed my perspective on how difficult it is for a woman to live in a Barbie world. What the movie asserts, and I'll spoil it for you. Here's a spoiler alert, so cover your ears. And I don't feel bad about spoiling it, because if you haven't seen it in 3 years, that's your problem, not mine. But the movie asserts that the Barbie phenomenon was both a blessing and a curse. The movie says that Barbie was a blessing because Barbie could be or do anything. I mean, Barbie in all of these different iterations, Barbie was a house mom, she was a lawyer, a doctor, a police officer, a president, an ambassador. She was a veterinarian. Every occupation under the sun, they made a Barbie for. And what Barbie did was Barbie changed the narrative about what women could be and what women could do. And from that perspective, Barbie was a game changer and was a huge blessing, because men thought that women should just stay at home and take care of the kids. Barbie challenged us to think outside of the box about what a woman could be and what she could do. That was the blessing. The curse that the movie tells us about, which I didn't see coming, was that Barbie was also a curse in the fact that while women were believed and the perspective was that they could be anything, Barbie had created this idea that you could be anything and keep it all together and be as glamorous while you're doing it. Well, that pressure and anxiety to be anything and do anything and keep it all together and be as glamorous and as fabulous as Barbie was a weight that most women buckled under that pressure. So while Barbie was intended to be a blessing, it turned out to be a curse. I didn't understand that before I saw the movie. Now I'm sensitive to the pressure women face, and I think every man should be as well. So when I saw the movie, I was telling all the fellas, I said, hey, all of you guys, if any man who's worth his salt needs to see the Barbie movie. That was what I was saying in 2023, and I'm saying it now, even though I've spoiled it for you. You got to see it, because I think you need to wrap your mind around how difficult it is for a woman living in a Barbie world. Now, what's fascinating is that this woman depicted in Proverbs 31 is like a biblical Barbie. She has it all together, and what we'll see in this story is she can do anything and be anything, and she is just this ideal. She is like this Wonder Woman of the Bible, and I wonder how helpful Proverbs 31 is in helping wives and mothers look at a picture of how the scriptures elevate women, to show the dignity and the nobility of women, just regular women doing regular things, living regular lives. I hope that our women don't walk away from today saying, Pastor just made being a mother and a wife even more difficult. What I want to do is say that the Bible celebrates this biblical Barbie who has it all together and is glamorous, which I'm going to show you. She's fabulous in the text, not to put more pressure on you, but to show that as we stack up these virtues and these values, that maybe by the end of our life, our women can be somewhere in the radius of this amazing woman in Proverbs 31. Let me just offer a little bit of a commercial. We've cast a vision during Vision Sunday in September that we want to begin our ministry to women, which is called Reconciled Women Are, and we will fill in the blank. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to gather women together and say, reconciled women are virtuous. Reconciled women are responsible. Reconciled women are nurturers. Reconciled women are leaders. And we will continue to fill in that blank. We're excited because this is going to be a ministry of, by, and for our women. No guys will be involved. Pastor won't be here other than to serve and park cars. But we've been talking about getting this ministry off the ground on Friday nights. And this is a great way to sort of segue and make a commercial to pray and think through what a Friday night gathering of our reconciled women would look like, and what role you'd like to play in that if you are a woman and you want to circle up with other women. Proverbs chapter 31, beginning at verse 10. You guys, again, have these slides in your quorum. Dale, can I show you a really cool feature in this passage? Whoever wrote this chapter of Proverbs 31, at least verses 10 through 31, wrote them in this fascinating hidden acrostic. There are 22 verses in Proverbs 31, 10 through 31. And each verse begins with a letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So verse 10 begins with the Hebrew letter Aleph. And then verse 11 begins with the letter B or Bet. Verse 12 begins with the letter G, Gimel, and all the way through the verses. This is fascinating that Solomon, or whoever the author is of this paragraph, began every verse with a letter of the alphabet in order. And this is not the only place this happens. This happens like in Psalm 139. Psalm 119, the longest chapter in the Bible. Every chapter in Psalm 119 begins with these letters. This happens throughout Scripture, but it's beautiful that it's happening in this text, and I wanted to show it to you. You don't see it in the English, but it's there in the Hebrew text. So there's great skill and thought that went into penning these words. So may we be blessed by them. Here's the big sort of meta idea, and it's simply that we want to talk about a wonderful wife and mother of value, virtue, and valor. There are some wonderful wives and mothers of value, virtue, and valor, and that's what this chapter is about. And there are 5 W's in the text, movements that'll happen, and we'll weave in and out of each one of these movements. But one of them is the woman or the wife's her worth, her witnesses. We'll look at her works, and then her wisdom and her worship. Those are the 5 movements in the text. And again, we'll weave in and out of those 5 W's. So it's her worth, her witnesses, her works, her wisdom, and then her worship. So let's journey through this passage, and let's begin with her worth. Look at what Solomon says. He says, who can find, this is a rhetorical question, who can find a wife of noble character? He says, she is far more precious or far more valuable than jewels. Who can find a woman or a wife who is noble, virtuous, honorable, wholesome, righteous, principled, of moral character? Solomon says, man, that type of wife, that type of woman is hard to find. He says, but her worth, if you find such a woman, her worth is far more valuable than rubies. The question presumes that the task of finding a wife of this nobility, of this value is difficult. I want you to notice the picture of this immaculate ruby that is before you. I love this because ruby gemstones are known as the king of all gems. And they're costly for 3 reasons. Their rarity, first, their durability, second, and then their colority as well. Colority refers to the intensity and purity and strength of a ruby's color. It says that a woman of noble, virtuous character is more priceless than even the most expensive ruby on planet Earth. I love that. Because again, I was telling you guys the other day that our women, these virtuous women that we have, are the most wonderful thing God ever created. And here Solomon is affirming that here in this text. So her worth is more valuable than even the king of all gems, the best and the clearest and the rarest ruby. Now her witnesses begins with her husband. We'll see her kids chime in later. But if she's that valuable, then somebody ought to be there to testify to her great value. And her husband is that first witness. In verses 11 and 12, the text says, the heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will not lack any good thing. She rewards him with good and not evil all the days of her life. I love how in verse 11a, she's trustworthy. And then in 11b, she has a beneficiary. She's trustworthy because her husband trusts her with his whole heart. I don't know about you guys, but I trust Stacy with everything I got. And after almost 28 years of us being together, there's nothing about her that I don't trust. She's earned my trust that I would send her anywhere on any mission for any reason. Not that she's perfect, but just I know her heart. And so I trust her with my life. I trust my wife, and that is a virtuous, a noble, moral, ethical, wholesome wife. Her husband trusts her, and I trust my wife with everything I got. And then she leaves beneficiary. She said she rewards him with good and not evil all the days of her life. The husband won't lack anything good. He'll be rewarded by her with good and not evil. And so she's trustworthy, and she has a beneficiary, and her husband is that beneficiary. Now, Solomon spends a huge portion of this text on her works. And so let's look at how she conducts herself, how she works and invests herself in her family and in her vocation. This is really insightful, because the first thing we learn in verse 13 is that she's skillful and delightful in her work. Look at this. It says she selects wool and flax and works with willing hands. She's her skill. Wool and flax. Flax is a plant that when dried is spun to make linen. Not only is she skillful by making linen out of wool and flax, but she also works with willing hands. She approaches her linen making work with delight, with pleasure, and joy. Here is a picture of a spindle and a distaff. When women were using these items, they would put material on the spindle, and then somehow or another with the distaff they would weave together garments and blankets and apparel for the bed. And here this woman is using her hands, because it takes two hands to do this. And here she is skillfully making linen as her vocation. And it's interesting that she is happy to do this work. She takes pleasure in her work. She is delightful, and she's joyful in the work she does. And that is a picture of how this mother, this wife works. Look at her works in verse 14, 15, and 16. She's an entrepreneur and a provider for her family. Verse 14 says, look at her enterprise. She's an enterpriser. Look at this. It says that she is like the merchant ships bringing her food from far away. She rises while it is still night and provides food for her household and portions for her female servants. She evaluates a field and buys it, and she plants a vineyard with her earnings. So I want you to see in verse 14, she's an enterpriser. One author says the point of the simile that she is like merchant ships bringing her food from far away. The point of this is to say that she goes wherever she needs to go, near or far, to gather all the food for the needs and the likes of her family. This line captures the vision in the industry of this woman. She is an enterpriser. She is out buying food from merchant ships that are trading and importing food. There's local food available, but she's going out and importing specific food for her family. First, look at verse 15. She's a provider. She rises while it's still night. That means she gets up early in the morning and she provides food for her household. She's a provider. And then she provides, the text says in verse 15, and portions for her female servants. The portions she provides are daily duties and assignments for her female servants. She's a manager and an overseer and a director of her household and of her estate. Notice this. I love this in verse 16. She's an enterpriser. She evaluates a field and buys it. She noticed that her husband is not mentioned. She's thinking about making a purchase without her husband's involvement, which is strange in the ancient world. She's capable of evaluating the prospects of a field and making a purchase. And then she plants a vineyard in that newly purchased field from her earnings, from her linen making business. So she understands her profit margin, and she's able to take her earnings and buy a field so that she can, in addition to her linen making business, now she can sell grapes in her vineyard. This woman is an enterpriser. She's industrious, and she is a shaker and a mover. Kind of like Barbie, right? Just a biblical Barbie. This lady is extraordinary, and she doesn't need her husband's permission to make these purchases. Why? Because he trusts her. Remember? So you don't need to micromanage your wife when you trust her. Her works go on in verse 17. Look at her strength. Her strength is depicted in verse 17. It says, she draws on her strength and reveals that her arms are strong. Can you picture her rolling up the sleeves of her garment to show that she's got some muscle to handle the task of all of these jobs of the vineyard and the linen making? She's got strength and determination and readiness for all of the tasks that are before her. It takes strength to do that. And this woman is rolling up her sleeves and is ready to get to work. I love it. Again, she's industrious. In verse 18 and 19, the text says she sees that her profits are good and her lamp never goes out. In other words, she stays up late at night. Remember, she gets up early in the morning while it's still dark, and then she's burning the candle late at night. It never goes out at night. She extends her hands to the spinning staff, and her hands hold the spindle. She does her own accounting work. She recognizes that her profits are good, and her work ethic is extraordinary as her lamp never goes out. I can't wait to get to my dad's house and remind my grandmother how early she got up in the morning, how late she stayed up at night at the computer or on the phone trying to disciple somebody, encourage somebody in the Word, trying to save a marriage or save a life. My grandmother was up 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning chatting with people, trying to disciple and share the gospel with anybody that she could. Because you get up in the middle of the night at her house and mom is still on the phone laboring with people. I watched this happen. I've seen a Proverbs 31 woman and my grandmother who I'm on my way to see. She was that woman growing up in my life. She is industrious. She's got an impeccable and extraordinary work ethic. And notice that one author says the distaff and spindle here that she's again referring, that the text is referring to her linen making business. She would have been able to make good money with this trade. And so here she is leveraging that and the profits in verse 20 because she is generous. In verse 20, she's industrious in verses 18 and 19, continuing to her linen making business. But look at how generous she is. The text says this, and this is a synonymous parallel. It's basically saying one thing in two different ways. Verse 20 says, her hands reach out to the poor. That's one way of saying it. Another way of saying it is she extends her hands to the needy. One author said this verse describes her generous spirit. Concern for the poor is a fundamental virtue of wisdom literature. And being generous, therefore, she is doing wisdom. Part of what it means to be wise is to be sensitive to those that are marginalized and disenfranchised, those that are poor and living in the margins. To not have a consciousness for those that are less fortunate than us makes us fools. And this woman is the epitome of wisdom because she reaches out her hand to the poor and to the needy. I mentioned this before as we were talking about this. Remember John the Baptist was talking about social concern last week, that one of the values of the kingdom is that we love our neighbor to the degree that we love ourselves. I think I mentioned last week, whenever we have scraps left over from discipleship or we're having some sort of fiesta, I noticed that Asia always picks up the scraps and hits the streets and gives leftovers to somebody who is unhoused, who may be hungry. She's aware that there are poor and needy people, and those leftovers could go to our homes for us to eat. We don't need them. I mean, we do, but we don't. Somebody else needs them more. And she packs it all up, and she gets to the streets to share that food with people who desperately need it and appreciate it. That's a virtuous woman. That is a wise woman who's not just thinking about consuming the resources for herself, but is thinking about who's poor and who's needy. That's a woman of virtue and valor. In verses 21 and 22, she confidently scoffs at winter because she knows her family is going to be comfortably attired. Look at how she makes sure that her family is clothed well. Pay attention to this. Verse 21 says, she's not afraid for her household when it snows, when winter comes. For in all her household, they are doubly clothed. I'm going to challenge that translation in a second. But verse 22, she makes her own bed coverings, and her clothing is fine linen and purple. I want you to look at her confidence in verse 21 and how her family is going to be comfortably clothed. When wintertime comes, she's going to be weaving linen garments for her children. And so she's not worried about winter because she knows when the cold season comes, her children and her household are going to be adequately attired because she's making sure that her role as the mother and as the matron of her house, she makes sure that everybody from her husband down to the servants are properly clothed. She's going to make sure of that. So she laughs at wintertime. Come on, cold weather, bring it on. My family's going to be ready, and I'll make sure of that. Now, look at this, because Pay attention to this. Back at verse 21, when the text says, for all in her household are doubly clothed, the Hebrew text doesn't say doubly clothed. The Hebrew text says that her household is clothed in scarlet. To be clothed in scarlet is a hint of extravagance. Typical regular Joes didn't wear red. Rare to get a garment dyed red was a really extravagant and expensive and costly ordeal. She clothes her whole household in red. Pay attention to that. So they're clothed well. So when winter comes, they're not only going to be adequately clothed, but they're going to look nice too. When I was little, my grandmother used to take us downtown LA to get suits for Easter and Christmas, and my grandmother always wanted us to look nice. And so I learned from an early age looking nice, especially as an African American, because when you're perceived as being less than, the one thing you can't do is look less than. And so my grandmother taught us to have some pride about how we looked and how we conducted ourselves, because you can't be black and look like you just crawled out of the gutter. My grandmother didn't tolerate. Neither of my grandmothers tolerated that. I had two grandmothers who spent a lot of money on clothes because it was important for them growing up as builders. And both of my grandmothers were born in the 30s. They know what it's like to come through Jim Crow. They know what it's like to be treated like second-class citizens. They know what it's like to grow up under separate but equal. And the one thing they taught us is that if you want to be perceived differently, you need to look differently. And this woman in Proverbs 31, she's dressing her family in scarlet. That's expensive, extravagant stuff. That's Neiman Marcus. That ain't Macy's and Kohl's. That's the good stuff. And not just her family, but I'll show you in a second, she dresses herself in purple. Those are royal garments. So not just for her household, but so I want to say to people, hey, don't skimp on don't think that you got to be a miser. We're going to talk about that in a second. It's okay to look nice. God's not against people dressing up and buying nice things. God's not against that. As long as you pay your tithes and offering, God ain't against anything else you do. As long as you take care of Him first, God ain't worried about the rest. As long as you bless Him, take care of the needy, and then whatever you do with the rest, God don't care about. Here, this woman models that really, really well. Notice that in verse 22, she makes her own bed coverings, and notice that her clothing is fine linen and purple. Again, here's the woman proving that she's not a miser. She dresses her family in scarlet, and she dresses herself in purple and fine linen. So here, this woman is committed to looking nice herself and dressing her family in nice things. So it's possible for us to be the people of God and be in the will of God and actually look nice in how we dress. That is something God is not against. Now let's transition back to her witnesses because again, her husband is the focus of her witness. Verse 23 says her husband is known at the city gates where he sits amongst the elders of the land. Her husband is a respected elder who congregates at the city gates. The city gates were a place where business was transacted. The city gates were a place where court cases were adjudicated. The city gates were a place where city news was shared. It was at the city gates. It was the place where the hub of community life happened at the city gates, and the elders in the ancient world would sit there as the leaders, and they would handle the affairs of the city and of the community. And her husband, because of the way she conducts herself, her husband is welcomed at the city gates. Notice that she is a testimony of her husband's credibility. I love that. Because of her nobility, it makes him credible. He earns a seat at the city gates because they recognize how virtuous she is. Man, a wife can either accentuate her husband or she can diminish him. And here, this woman is lifted up her husband and gave him credibility amongst his peers at the most honorable place in the city, which was at the city gates. He's a witness, and so are the elders at the city gates of her virtue and her nobility and her excellence. Now, Solomon transitions back in 24 to her works again. He says, now she makes and sells linen garments. Yeah, we know that. And she delivers belts to the merchant. So now she's taken her linen garments and she got her business thriving. And now she's traveling in order to sell them to merchant traders that are bartering and selling. And now she's engaged in international commerce. Who said, why is it that evangelicals, especially Christians, evangelical Christians make the argument that it's not God's will for a woman to work outside of the home? They got a problem with Proverbs 31. Because this woman is traveling outside of the home to be engaged with these merchant traders to engage in business in the marketplace. These conservative evangelicals have created a false picture of what a woman can be and what she can do. God's not concerned about whether a woman works in the home or outside of the home. God is concerned that she takes care of her home, whether her primary responsibility is in the home. What she does as a vice president or executive director or director or CEO or whatever, that's her secondary responsibility. Her primary responsibility is her husband and her children and the affairs of her home. God has never said that a woman can't work outside of the home. That's nonsense. Again, you got a problem with this text. She's delivering sashes to these merchants in order to have them sell them abroad. This woman is just extraordinary. One author said this, the poet didn't think it strange or unworthy for a woman of this stature to be a businesswoman engaged in an honest trade. In fact, the weaving of fine linens was a common trade for women in the ancient world. He just affirmed what I just said. Again, this is just a reality of the picture that God is painting for this woman. Again, let's go back to her worth again as Solomon returns to this topic in verse 25. He says, strength and honor are her clothing, and she can laugh at the time to come. Notice she's dressed with vigor and virtue, strength, vitality. She clothes herself like as if her vitality and her vigor and her strength are garments that she puts on. She clothes herself with, and her virtue. She's able to laugh at the future because she's a woman of valor. Someone said preparation relieves pressure, because then all you have to do is go and perform. See, she can laugh at the time to come because she knows she's not scared of the future, because she knows whatever comes, she's going to be prepared. Because she knows how hard she works. She knows what kind of work ethic she has. She knows that she's noble and that she's virtuous and that she's got a moral and an ethical compass that honors God. And so she laughs at the future. She's not fearful of the future. She's prepared. And when you're prepared, it relieves pressure. So she's like, bring it on, future. Whatever you bring, I'll be ready. And that takes some courage to look at the future and laugh at it. That takes some intestinal fortitude. This woman is brave, and I love it. Now, finally, we get to the fourth W is her wisdom in verse 26. Her mouth, and this is again another synonymous parallel, says her mouth speaks wisdom and loving kindness, or loving instruction, or the Torah of chesed is on her tongue. Pay attention to this. I jonesed out on this because I found this beautiful in the Hebrew. It says that the Torah, or the instruction of loving kindness, is on her tongue. You guys know chesed is one of I think the most beautiful word in all of the Bible. And we don't have an English word to translate it, and so we think that chesed is the consistent, ever faithful, relentless, constantly pursuing, lavishly loyal, extravagant, unrestrained, furious love of God that is grounded in covenantal relationship. That's what chesed is. And notice that she's given instructions about loving kindness, either to her children or to her household or whoever she's investing in and pouring her life into. She's teaching what loving kindness looks like and giving instructions about how to live a life of loving kindness. Man, what a wise woman. Let's go back to her works in verse 27. Her works say this about her, that she's a manager and never an idler. Look at this. She watches over the activities of her household and is never idle. This woman is a manager. She's overseeing, managing, and directing the affairs of her entire household. There's nothing that happens in her house that she doesn't know about. Now, how can she do that while she's planting a vineyard and engaged in this linen making enterprise? How can she do both of those jobs and manage and direct and oversee her entire household? Well, because it says that she's never idle. She's never wasting her time. She's not a busybody, sitting around lazy as a sluggard, doing nothing. She's always into something and engaged with her household and her business enterprises. Her witnesses, her husband and her kids, speak up for her again. And 28 and 29, I love what her kids do in the Hebrew. You can't see this in the English, but it's jumping off the page at you in the Hebrew. Watch this. Verse 28 says, her children rise up and call her blessed, and her husband also praises her. And what does her husband say about, finally the husband speaks in the text, and what does he say about his virtuous, noble, wholesome, excellent wife? He says, many women have done noble deeds, but honey, you surpass them all. You are the best of the best of the best of the best. Man, that's good. That's verbal affirmation coming from her husband. But that's not the cool part. You know what the cool part is? It's what her kids do. Go back to verse 28. When the text says her children rise up is in the PL verb stem. You guys remember this from Genesis. The PL verb stem is the most intensive way to say something in the Hebrew text. So it takes a regular action and put it on steroids. In other words, the way I thought about it, if her children were seated, when they rise up, they hit their heads on the ceilings, praising their mother, saying that she is blessed and highly favored. They don't just stand to their feet, their heads hit the ceiling because it's in the PL. Can you picture that? Man, the kids are affirming that mom is blessed, happy, and fortunate, and we're going to jump out of our seats as high as we can go to affirm that mom is is a cut above. I love that. Our kids need to know that mom is blessed and happy and fortunate and favored by God. And her husband sings this little song about all of the women have done great things, but honey, you have surpassed them all. Now, finally, we get to her worship in verse 30. Finally, something about her devotion to God. It's been all about her being an enterpriser and a provider and an industrious and an overseer and a manager and a director and this great vigor and a great work ethic. But she's a woman of God too. Look at verse 30. The text says, charm is deceitful and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears Yahweh will be praised. She is experienced enough to know and to value the attributes that are eternal versus those that are deceitful and temporal. Beauty and charm are a woman's most valuable natural assets in an attempt to enchant any man. Every woman knows that she can either use beauty or charm. Either one of those will potentially get her the man that she wants. And if she got both, she's almost irresistible to a man. But this woman, she knows that charm can be deceitful and beauty is a fleeting attribute, as Mother Nature and Father Time are undefeated, and no woman is beautiful forever. Now, there are some exceptions to that rule, but generally, Mother Nature and Father Time catches up with all of us. So women shouldn't put all their eggs in their beauty basket, because one day they're not going to have that beauty to rely upon. And their charm, their ability to be charismatic and to enchant men, well, women lose that ability as well. But the one thing, the one attribute, the one characteristic, the one dynamic about a woman that is eternal is her fear, her reverence, her respect for the Lord. That's the attribute that Solomon says will get a woman praise. Please hear me. I'm not saying, and neither is the text saying, that charm and beauty are not valuable assets. What the text is saying is that they're less valuable than fear and reverence for Yahweh. Please don't hear me, because the brothers will say, Pastor, please don't tell him that beauty and charm is not important. Please don't tell him that. If you want a man, you better have some beauty and some charm, or both of them, because you need those. But they're less valuable than your reverence for God. So if a young man is drafting a list of reasons to ask a woman to marry him, her reverence and worship of God must be number one on the list. Charm and beauty can be on the list, but they just can't be first on the list. You guys tracking with me? And this is written to a man about finding a woman. This is instructions, and the instruction is, son, charm and beauty can be on your list. They just can't be the first one, the first item on your list. She's got to be a lover and a worshiper and a respecter. She's got to reverence God. That's got to be number one on your list. If that's not on your list, you don't have a list. I'm talking now. That's just the way it is. Then lastly, verse 31, a final witness of the woman. And this is an exhortation to all of us. Verse 31, one final witness. Give this virtuous, this noble, this excellent, this wonderful woman the reward of her labor, and let her works praise her at the city gates. This woman is to be honored among the most honorable. There's an imperative to reward her and give her praise for her noble and virtuous way of life in the presence of the most distinguished elders of the city. Don't give her praise and her rewards in a closet or in a private gathering. Do it at the city gates, where the most distinguished, where the most honorable, where the most respected are seated. Do it in their presence. She's worthy of that. Look at one simple coram deo, one takeaway, one way in which we live this out in the presence and before the face of God. Wives and mothers of virtue and valor are more valuable than precious rubies. Let's give them their praise and rewards every time we have an opportunity. And today is one of those opportunities on Mother's Day. Like Derek's amazing mother. Boy, Derek's mother, Maddie, shoo. Man, if I had a mom like that, just like this woman in Proverbs 31, Derek's mama was like that. And I know he want to get to heaven to see mom again, but Maddie was this. So I've been around some of these women in my life. I know what it looks like. I hope there's no pressure to say you gotta burn the candle at both ends. This message is to this young man who's looking for a wife and for a woman. And these instructions are, say, son, these are the things you should be looking for. And we may not ever get all of these. Our women may and our wives may not ever own all of these attributes at the same time or either in totality. But at least the Bible lifts up and says that this woman, she exists, but she's rare. Like you walking outside and finding a ruby, this woman is rare. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try to, our women shouldn't and our wives shouldn't try to emulate some of these aspects as God gives them opportunity to incorporate these values into the women of virtue and nobility that they want to be. Let's pray. God, thank you for Mother's Day. Thank you for these virtuous, valuable women of valor. They are excellent. They are wonderful. They are noble. They are moral and ethical, and they are trustworthy. And we are the beneficiaries of how they conduct their life. So God, I pray that this Barbie in the biblical world, that our women would see that with the fear of the Lord as their guide, as their reverence for you is the catalyst for their virtue and their character and their integrity. Anything is possible if they begin with reverence of the Most High. So God, shape our women to include these attributes into their lives. Give them discernment. May their husbands, their future husbands, their present husbands, may they trust them and may they be blessed with good and not evil all the days of their life. May their children rise up, hitting their head on the ceiling to say, Mom is blessed. So God, would you cultivate all of that in the lives of our amazing wives and mothers and future mothers that are with us in the building and those that are live streaming right now. Make this wonderful woman alive. Make her alive in each one of our women. Give us a picture of what that looks like. May the older women teach the younger women how to live peaceably with their husbands. May we mentor and disciple and coach up from the older to the younger. Because it's all ultimately for your glory and our good in Jesus' name.